Throughout human history, the grand tapestry of our past seems to be woven with threads of red. From the legions of Rome to the battlefields of the world wars, triumph has so often been synonymous with bloodshed. The victor's crown, it seems, is always heavy with the weight of sacrifice, stained by the very lifeblood of both friend and foe. We build monuments to conquerors, sing epics about warriors, and measure greatness by the territories won and empires forged in the crucible of conflict. This narrative is so ingrained in our collective consciousness that it is easy to believe it as the only way. That to win, someone else must lose, often catastrophically. But what if I told you there's another story? A quieter, yet arguably more powerful, narrative of victory? A story of triumph without blood. This isn't a utopian fantasy, it's a real and recurring pattern in our history, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit. These are the victories won not with swords and spears, but with courage, intellect, and an unwavering commitment to a cause greater than oneself. These are the triumphs that build rather than destroy. They unite rather than divide. And their legacies resonate not in the silence of graveyards, but in the vibrant hum of progress and freedom. Today, we're going to explore this extraordinary path to victory. We'll journey through time to witness some of the most profound and impactful bloodless triumphs in history. We'll look at the strategic brilliance of nonviolent resistance, the world-changing power of scientific discovery, and the quiet revolutions that have reshaped our societies from the inside out. These stories prove that the greatest victories aren't about conquering others, but about elevating all of humanity. Let's begin in ancient India with a man who would become a symbol of peace and enlightenment, the Buddha. Born a prince, Siddhartha Gautama was shielded from the world's suffering. But when he finally encountered old age, sickness, and death, he didn't raise an army to conquer them. He couldn't. Instead, he embarked on a spiritual quest. His battlefield was his own mind. His enemies were greed, hatred, and delusion. After years of intense meditation, he achieved enlightenment, not by vanquishing an external foe, but by understanding the nature of suffering and finding the path to its end. His triumph was a victory over the internal conflicts that plague us all. The empire he built was not of land, but of wisdom of philosophy that has brought peace to billions of hearts. For over 2.5 millennia, a triumph that continues to ripple outwards, without a single drop of blood ever being shed in its name. Now, let's leap forward 2,000 years to the heart of the British Empire, to India in the 20th century. Here, one of the world's largest empires was brought to its knees not by an opposing army, but by a frail-looking man in a simple cloth dhoti, Mahatma Gandhi. His weapons were not guns or bombs, but truth and non-cooperation. He called it Satyagraha, or Truth Force. The Salt March of 1930 is a perfect example. The British had a monopoly on salt, taxing it heavily and making it illegal for Indians to produce their own. In response, Gandhi didn't incite a violent rebellion. Instead, He and a small group of followers began a 240-mile walk to the sea to make their own salt in a powerful act of civil disobedience. The march grew, with thousands upon thousands joining along the way, a river of humanity flowing towards the coast. The British authorities responded with force, beating the non-violent protesters. But the world was watching. Newsreels and photographs of the brutal crackdown on peaceful people shocked the global conscience. The moral high ground had shifted irrevocably. The British Empire, a military superpower, was shown to be powerless against the sheer moral force of a united people. Gandhi's triumph was the independence of India, a victory won not by overpowering the enemy, but by winning over the hearts and minds of the world. He proved that you can dismantle an empire by simply refusing to cooperate with its injustice. This idea of moral victory didn't stop in India. It crossed oceans and inspired another great struggle for freedom in the United States. During the Civil Rights Movement, leaders like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. consciously adopted Gandhi's principles of nonviolent resistance. They faced down police dogs, high-pressure fire hoses, and mob violence with peaceful marches, sit-ins, and boycotts. The battle for desegregation was fought not on a traditional battlefield, but at lunch counters, on public buses, and on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. The triumph here was the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. These were landmark legislative victories that dismantled the legal structures of segregation. But the deeper triumph was a change in the soul of a nation. Dr. King's dream was not of conquering his opponents, but of creating a beloved community where former enemies could sit down together at the table of brotherhood. This was a triumph of love over hate, of unity over division. It was a victory achieved not by shedding the blood of the oppressor, but by appealing to the conscience of a nation, demonstrating that the arc of the moral universe, though long, indeed bends toward justice. But triumphs without blood aren't limited to the political and spiritual realms. Think about the world of science and exploration. When Neil Armstrong took that one small step for a man on the surface of the moon, it was a giant leap for all humankind. The space race was born out of Cold War rivalry, a competition between the United States and the Soviet Union. Yet, the moment of victory, the lunar landing, wasn't a military conquest. No flag was planted to claim territory for one nation. Instead, the plaque left on the lunar module reads, "We came in peace for all mankind." This was a triumph of human ingenuity, curiosity, and our unyielding desire to reach beyond our limits. It was a victory over gravity, over the vast emptiness of space, over our own terrestrial limitations. The heroes of this story were not generals, but scientists, engineers, and astronauts. Their struggle was against the laws of physics and the challenges of technology. The legacy of this triumph is not a conquered people, but a wealth of scientific knowledge, technological innovation that we use every day, and a profound new perspective on our own fragile planet, a tiny blue marble floating in a sea of stars. This victory expanded our horizons and united the world, even for a brief moment, in shared awe and wonder. Consider also the quiet revolution sparked by Tim Berners-Lee. In 1989, working at CERN, he wasn't trying to build a corporate empire or a political dynasty. He was a scientist trying to solve a problem. How could researchers around the world share information more easily? His solution was the World Wide Web. He created the first web browser, web server, and the protocols that make it all work. And then he did something extraordinary. He gave it to the world for free, with no patents, no royalties. He could have become one of the wealthiest people on the planet. Instead, he chose to empower humanity. The triumph of the World Wide Web is a victory over the barriers of distance and information scarcity. It has democratized knowledge, connected billions of people, and created platforms for countless other bloodless revolutions in commerce, art, and social activism. Berners-Lee's victory wasn't about personal gain. It was a foundational gift that has allowed for the collective advancement of our entire species. It's a triumph that grows larger and more impactful every single day, without a single conflict. So what do all these stories have in common? They show us that true, lasting triumph comes not from domination, but from elevation. The Buddha elevated human consciousness. Gandhi and Dr. King elevated the moral conscience of their nations. The Apollo astronauts elevated our perspective of our place in the universe. Tim Berners-Lee elevated our collective intelligence. These bloodless victories are harder to achieve. They require immense patience, strategic brilliance, and a kind of courage that is far rarer than the battlefield variety. It's the courage to absorb blows without retaliating, to hold onto a vision in the face of ridicule, and to trust in the better nature of humanity. But their impact is more profound and enduring. A military victory can be overturned by the next war. Borders can be redrawn. But you cannot undiscover a scientific truth. You cannot erase a moral awakening. You cannot take back the freedom that comes from knowledge. These triumphs don't leave behind ruins. They leave behind infrastructure of peace, of justice, of knowledge. They are the victories that truly define our progress as a civilization. They remind us that our greatest strength is not in our capacity to destroy, but in our boundless capacity to create, to connect, and to understand. The path of triumph without blood is the path of our collective future. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey today. If these stories resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content that explores the powerful ideas that shape our world. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments what is another example of a bloodless triumph that inspires you. Thanks for watching.